Hello, everyone. Good evening. Welcome to this BIK webinar on the Parent and Caregiver Corner. Welcome. Great to see lots of people with us this evening. Thanks so much for joining. Your cameras and microphones have been turned off, obviously just to make this webinar easier to manage. But if you want to ask any questions or leave any comments throughout, then please do pop them into the chat. And myself and my colleagues, Anna Rita and Irene and Sarah, will be looking out for them, and we'll get to those as and when we see them. So we'll make a start, and I'm sure if some people join us along the way, they'll just join in and come in with the flow as well. Welcome. My name is Gareth Cort. I am a member of the digital citizenship team at European Schoolnet. I regularly run these webinars along with my colleagues, so you may have seen my face or heard my voice before on these if you've joined them in the past. If this is your first one, then welcome. You've picked a great one to start with, because we're going to be walking you through the new Better Internet for Kids platform, including the newly launched Parent and Caregiver Corner on there, as well as retreading some old ground on the platform of some features that used to exist that you may be familiar with. And then I'll wrap it all up with some further information about how you can engage with parents and carers in your school in order to get them on board and working to help support children and young people to be safe, positive and respectful online. And then when we get towards the end of the webinar, my colleague Anna Rita is going to jump on, and she's got a few extra announcements and things to make you aware of before we finish. But as I mentioned, if you do have any questions, please do pop them into the chat. Very happy to answer anything as we go. And hopefully it will be a really, really useful session. It's also got a live demonstration, which is never risky at all, but I'm sure it will go just fine. So, as I mentioned, this is all about the Better Internet for Kids platform, which we recently relaunched last month, back in October. And with a new platform comes a new address. So you do need to update your bookmarks. You'll notice the address on the screen there. So it's very similar to the old one, but it is now hyphenated, and it does now have the .europa.eu domain name at the end there, which designates it as an official European Commission website. So please do make sure that you have got all your links and things that you may use yourself or that you may share with colleagues. Please make sure it's all updated to the new website address. Throughout these slides in this presentation, you'll see the updated versions linking to all the features that were present on the old platform that have been ported over to the new one as well. There are redirects in place. So if you do type in or click on an old link for the old platform, it will redirect you to the new site. But in most cases, it won't redirect you to the same section. It will just take you to the landing page of the site here as you see it. So you may just need to go back and recheck those links as well. So what are we going to have a look at? Well, we're going to go through a couple of features across the platform. Some are ones that were on the previous platform that you may be familiar with. Others have had a new lick of paint and a fresh leash of life and look a little bit different. So we'll go over those as well. And you can see on the list on the left there are the things that we're going to have a quick guided tour through in a few moments. We're going to have a look at the news section. We're going to have a look at the knowledge hub. We're going to have a look at the resources. We're going to have a look at the section for events and campaigns. We're going to look at some other sections for information and getting help. And then we're going to backtrack on ourselves to go to the learning corners, which are one of the main focuses of this webinar today. So if you bear with me a moment, I'm just going to swap and share over to my browser so that we can have a little look at the website together. Fabulous. So hopefully you can see my website. Colleagues, if you could just give me a thumbs up, just let me know that you can see it okay before I start doing a tour. Brilliant. Thank you very much. Okay, so you can see it's had a new lease of life. So if you've been to better-internet-for-kids.eu in the past, you knew what it looked like. This has got a new visual style, very nice and eye-catching. Straight away from the landing page, there is a wealth of information that you can access. I'm not going to explain it all or click on all of it because actually it's featured in the sections that we're going to explore in detail in a moment. But if you scroll down, you've got this big hero image or banner image at the top that's got some of the main points of information, such as learning about the Better Internet for Kids Plus strategy, learning about other campaigns that we're running, one of which Anna Rita will talk about at the end. and other aspects of the work of Better Internet for Kids, such as youth participation, which is actually showing a photo there from Safer Internet Forum 2023. But if we scroll down, it sort of casts a spotlight on some of the upcoming or most recent events. So, for example, Safer Internet Day, which, if you haven't marked in your calendars already, is on Tuesday, the 11th of February, 2025. So there's a nice reminder there and links through to all the details around Safer Internet Day. There's the Age Assurance Toolkit, which I won't talk about because my colleague Anna Rita will explain about that more at the end. And then there's some other posts from the news section, which we're going to have a look at in more detail in a moment. Moving down, it takes you to other sections that we're also going to explore, such as the Knowledge Hub, such as how to find your safer internet center in your country. And you can see it goes on more details about other initiatives and work, the Learning Corners, which we're also going to explore in more detail in a moment, and so on and so forth, including other upcoming events and latest news. So we'll pop right back up to the start so we can go through the top. And you'll see that the categories at the top of these tabs match the things that I just talked about in my slides. So we're going to go through them one by one, starting with news. And we're going to start with the BIK Bulletin, something you may be familiar with already, because that may well be how you became aware of this webinar in order to join it today. But if you've missed any of the editions or you want to go back and review any material, all of the BIK Bulletins from 2024 all the way back to 2022 are available there, and you can dive in and access all of the information very, very easily. The other section, though, that is updated a little bit more frequently than that is the articles section. And you might notice if you've looked at that on the old site, the new platform now has a slightly more detailed approach in terms of searching. So it's always it's always sorted by date with the most recent additions here at the top, but you'll see there's a lot of different filtering options available to you to find different bits of information, particularly searching for information that has been put onto the platform by your National Safer Internet Centre. So if you click on country, you can actually look down the list and see the number of posts that have been made by different centres. And clicking on one, let's go with the Czech Republic, and just come away and press search. Give it just a moment. We'll then refresh it with all of the posts from the relevant Safer Internet Centre or country. So you can see those things there and browse them. And if you want to clear any of the filters that you apply at any time, and this applies to other pages that use similar searching as well, you can just press on the clear filter button and it takes you right back to the default view that I showed you at the start. So that's a great way of keeping up to date with the work that your Safer Internet Centre in your country is doing, but also the work that we're doing at Better Internet for Kids, initiatives, resources, events, and so on. Many of those will get posted there. Moving on to the Knowledge Hub, I'm going to skip the Policy Monitor because that's slightly less relevant to you, but we'll come over to Research and Reports, which is very, very useful as well. And again, you can see the same type of searching on the left here. And again, you might want to pick research from your country and learn more about that. So let's just scroll down the list. Let's find one with a few entries. There we go. Norway has got 9. So press on that, press on search, give it a moment just to refresh, and then you can see all the results from your country of recent research that has taken place. And you'll notice some extra text down the bottom here that gives you an idea of the audience, but also links it directly into the Better Internet for Kids Plus strategy and the 3 pillars that sit within that strategy of protection, empowerment, and participation. So there's lots of information there as well, and you can find that. So you can see that one down there is pillar 2. The ones at the top are mostly around pillar 1. So if you were interested in a particular aspect of the BIK Plus strategy, then you can also search via those too. So a wealth of information there. Rules and guidelines is also very useful to be aware of too, more from a legal perspective. So again, if you're interested about particular EU directives that have been implemented or are incoming, or indeed if you want to know about particular legislation and directives within your own country, then again, you can have a little look. So this time we're going to pick Austria. On search, give it a moment to refresh, and here then you can see a whole list of various legislation and strategies and other things that have come in, and it also gives you the implementation date and whether or not these are still in effect or whether they are ongoing, as many of these Austrian legislative acts are. So it gives you a lot of information. So if you want to get to grips with some of the background of legislation that relates to the internet and children in your country, then that's a great way of getting up to speed very, very quickly. And then finally, the Insights tab as well. At the moment, it doesn't have very much because the site is relatively new. As I mentioned, only launched last month, but will be added with further greater insights from the Knowledge Hub in general. We're going to skip Learning Corners because we're going to come back to that in a few moments, but we're going to head over next to the Resources tab. And this is one that you may be familiar with from the old platform. It is the resource directory that includes resources not only from ourselves, but of course the network of safer internet centres. And those resources may be ones that are suitable to use in the classroom with your learners. They may be resources that are aimed at raising awareness, and that could be for staff and teachers. It could be for parents and caregivers. It could be for young people themselves. And again, as you can see, sorted by the most recent date, and down the left here you've got the various options, and you've got more options on this particular page given the nature of the resources. So you have the opportunity to look for various types of resources, you have the opportunity to search via language, you have the opportunity to search for a particular age range that the resources are suitable for, which is very handy if you are a primary teacher or a secondary school teacher. You have the ability to search via various topic. So for example, I'm going to choose cyberbullying here. You can see there's 119. And then of course you can then search on top of that. You can put secondary search filters in as well. And you could search for resources in particular countries. Now, at the moment, it hasn't refreshed how many cyberbullying resources are in these different countries. It's just displaying the total number available for every country. But if I actually press search and just filter by cyberbullying, give that a moment to refresh, and then I come back down here and choose country, you'll now see those numbers are much, much smaller, and it demonstrates the actual numbers available in each country. So we're going to go down to France. I press that, press search again. And then you'll see on the right, I've now got all the resources from France that have been tagged with cyberbullying. And they may be directly related to cyberbullying as a resource around that particular topic, or they may be a different type of resource that mentions cyberbullying amongst other risks or issues as part of that resource. And you can see here, we've got various types. And by the yellow tags that you see at the top, you can tell very quickly if things are reports or research, or video content, or lesson plans, or other types of learning resources as well. So great way of being able to search all of that. And it gives you more options than ever before now than you had on the previous platform. We've got a number of guides here, so I won't spend too long on these. These are ones that are well worth exploring yourself to become more familiar with. One is our guide to apps, which lists a number of the most popular apps and services that are used by children and young people across Europe. One thing to point out on here, other than the search terms, which again you can use to find ones for a particular minimum age, based on what the minimum age may be under GDPR in your country. Obviously, you can search via various keywords for particular things that may be issues that are prevalent or related to that platform. One thing I did want to draw your attention to, though, is you can see some of them are not only tagged with the type of app that they are, be they gaming or social network or other services, but some of them are also tagged at the bottom here with these two expressions that we use of VLOP, and also you'll see a VLOCE. So those stand for very large online platform, very large online search engine. And those are terms that are sometimes used when talking not only in the Better Internet for Kids Plus strategy, but also if you are exploring the Digital Services Act, they make reference to these VLOPs and VLOCEs. So that's what that means, that they are the biggest platforms with the biggest number of users across Europe. So it's quite a good way of identifying those ones if you're not quite sure as well. Moving on to the guide to age assurance, which I won't say too much about because, again, we've got a bit more of an update at the end, but there's a number of details in there that you can explore. And you may be familiar with this one from the previous platform. The guide to positive online content is still there with all the details and other links and infographics as well. So you can make use of that too. Heading over to events and campaigns. Events gives you the most up-to-date events, not just from us, but from others as well. And in fact, there is our webinar right at the top of the list there. But it also references various days, both in Europe and internationally, that may be of relevance and importance. So Human Rights Day 2024 talks about other things that may be upcoming as well. So the Internet Governance Forum that's being held in Saudi Arabia later in December, and so on and so forth. And again, you've got options to search through those dates as well. Campaigns relates to the current ongoing campaigns that we have, and my colleague Anna Rita will talk about the Media Smart Online campaign at the end. Safer Internet Day, of course, is a long-standing one because it takes place every year. And if you haven't seen it before, there is the brand new mascot and logo for Safer Internet Day, Ali or Ally, if you prefer. So you can click on those and find greater details around all those campaigns too. And then last but not least in the campaigns, details of the Safer Internet Forum 2024, which actually took place this time last week, last Thursday. So at the moment, it's just displaying an overview of the forum. It's only been a week since it's concluded, but there will be further details and information of the outputs of that forum there available for you, including recordings and other useful resources that you can access too. So lots of information. And again, if you want to explore previous Safer Internet forums, all the links are there on the right-hand side. And then finally, places to go for further information and help. If you want to know more about the Better Internet for Kids strategy, then there is a page under the About section. Thank you. And Susanna said, very nice mascot. Thank you, Susanna. We should also mention, if you hadn't heard about the mascot before, it was designed by our BIK youth. They did actually work on the design of that and say what they wanted for a Safer Internet Day mascot moving forward. So it's made by youth for youth. So I'm glad your students liked it as well. So coming back to the sections, so Better Internet for Kids obviously talks about the Better Internet for Kids strategy in more detail. I wanted to show you the Safer Internet Centres page because I feel that is much more easy to use now than it was on the previous platform in terms of finding your centre. You can either type in the name of your country there, or you can open the drop-down menus and select your centre from the list. So we're just going to pick on Poland. And then it will take you straight through and you can press on the country page and find out the details of your awareness centre, your helpline, your hotline, and details around youth participation as well. Just heading back to the About page, if you want to know more or you don't know so much about the InSafe network of Safer Internet Centres and the InHope network of hotlines, then there's more details there as well, including more information about the BIK youth work that we do and frequently asked questions around various aspects of the site. There is a contact form that you can press on. So if you need to get in touch with us about something, then you've got the option to do so by filling in the form. But you might have also noticed at the top here, there's this consistent red banner that says get help, report it in relation to online abuse. And if you press on that, it takes you straight through to further information about how to get help and support about online abuse or online harms. And indeed, you can see different language options available on the right-hand side. And these various links will take you through to the various different helplines and hotlines as well. There is also further information down at the bottom of the page, regardless of where you are on the site. If you scroll right down, you can get to the Contact Us links very easily, as well as following us on social media, but also details of how to contact the European Commission as well through various channels too. So that concludes most of the sections. Oh, I should also not forget the nice big yellow one there that says Safer Internet Day. So if you need a quick link to get to Safer Internet Day or direct others to get to Safer Internet Day materials, you can find it right there. But as we mentioned at the start, the focus of this webinar was on the learning corners. So that's where we're going to head now. I'm just going to press on the main one to load up the main page. And there are actually 3 learning corners that we have on the new platform. There is one for children and youth, which is still in development. There is the newly launched Parents and Caregivers corner, which we'll come to in just a moment. And there is the Teachers and Educators corner, which you may be familiar with from the old platform. So I'm just going to dive in and give you a very quick tour of the Teachers and Educators one, in case you haven't visited it since the new platform has gone live, just so you are familiar with where things are. And then we'll take a closer look at the Parents and Caregivers platform, corner as well. So if you have used this before, all of the same content that was on the old platform is now here on the new platform, but it might look slightly different to the way it was presented previously. You can see here we've got the scrolling banner of various bits of information. One that just flashed up, I will go back to it. There we go, are the recordings of these webinars. So if you haven't joined any of the previous ones and you want to know what we spoke about, then all of the recordings and details are available in that section by pressing that yellow button. If we just go back again, there's ways to join the BIK Teacher voice panel, which I will mention at the end very briefly. And If you would like to take any of our massive online open courses hosted on the European SchoolNet Academy platform, then there's a quick link to the site there. And in fact, there is an annual Better Internet for Kids MOOC. So the last one ran back in February and March, and the next one's scheduled to run in February 2025. So you can find details of those courses and others on the European SchoolNet Academy platform. Courses that have been run in the past are still completely free to enroll on and work your way through. You just won't be able to complete the course and get the passing certificate at the end. But all the materials are freely there, and indeed there are MOOCs related to other projects that European SchoolNet, particularly the digital citizenship team, have been involved in this year, such as MLCE, which is a media literacy course, and the Enable course around tackling gender-based violence as well. So there's lots of information there, and lots of other courses from other teams in European SchoolNet covering other topics too. So working further down, you may be familiar with these if you have looked at the Teacher Corner in the past. These are the 4 core modules that we recommend all educators working through first of all. They are completely self-directed. There's no time limit. There's no kind of locking mechanism on any of them. All of them are available right from the get-go, so you can work through them in any order you like. But we do recommend working through these before you move on to any of the further deep dive content. I will just dive into one of them. I'm going to dive into key online risks, just so you can see how it looks. And it's all the same content that was on the previous platform. So it gives you all the information and details. Many of the modules, whether they are core or deep dive, have a self-directed activity, often a paper and pencil exercise. Further graphics, some have video clips where relevant, and all of them at the end, if I just scroll all the way down, this one's quite a long one, do have further links to other resources that may be useful as well. So at the risk of making anyone dizzy, I'm just going to scroll back up to the top. On the right hand side, you can also see a quick link to the various deep dives. And in fact, you can get to different parts of them. There's quite a few pages there just by clicking on the numbers or the previous and the next. But I'm actually just going to press back just to go back to the main page, where we can then see all of these deep dives down here as well. And again, in this case, sorted over 2 pages. And if you're familiar with these already, you will know they cover a variety of different topics. We're adding more on a regular basis. So there's more to come before the end of the year, and definitely more coming next year as well. So they cover things such as sextortion, to fake news, to cyberbullying, to cybersecurity and cybercrime, to persuasive design, to NFTs, and so on and so forth. Quite a diverse range of topics, and we're building to that all the time. So I'm going to go back up to the top. I'm going to press there just to go back a step, and we're going to take a quick look at the Parents and Caregivers Corner, which in some ways mirrors the content that is on the Teachers and Educators Corner, but of course all the information provided is intended for parents and caregivers rather than someone who may be working directly with young people in a classroom. So you'll notice that the format is very, very similar. The one thing you'll immediately see that's different is this link here to parental controls. We will come back to that in just a moment. But if we scroll down, we also have a selection of core modules and then deep dive modules as well. And you'll notice the deep dive modules are coloured pink, whereas on the teacher and educator corner, they are coloured green to help you distinguish. At the moment, there is only one core module sitting there, but there are 2 more in development that will be coming very, very soon for parents and carers. The one that's there at the moment is about how to start and engage in discussions with children about online safety and being safe. The deep dives, as you can see, we've only got 4 there, but again, more are going to be added and will be added on a regular basis. And in fact, I'm going to pick your brains in a few moments about what you think would be a useful addition to that section. But for the moment, I will just go into one of them that's going to online gaming, just so you can see how those look as well. And as you can see, it's very similar to the Teacher Corner in terms of information, maybe video clips or infographics or other things, various points, various hyperlinks to other resources, either other modules or other content they may find useful as well. And has been designed to be a little bit easier to read, perhaps, for parents and caregivers who maybe don't have as much time as you do to sit down and really get to grips with a particular topic. But again, this one is quite a long one because online gaming has quite a number of risks that young people can experience. And you'll notice again, links to further information and resources at the end. So that is the Parent and Caregivers Corner. Well worth sharing with parents in your school community if you feel it is appropriate. If you feel for whatever reason that information isn't the easiest to access, then of course you do also have the resource directory that has resources in other languages too that may be more relevant. And indeed, there may be things from your Safer Internet Centre directly created for parents and carers that can help them with online issues. So that is the corner in a nutshell. And in fact, that is the platform in a nutshell. If anyone has any questions or comments, please do feel free to type them in the chat. I'm just going to switch back from there, back to my slides, and then we will continue with some other things to think about. Bear with me just a moment. And here we go. Should be coming back up in just a moment. Okay, so I'm just going to skip forward a few slides. As I mentioned, these are the introductory modules that are available in the Teacher and Educator corner. And here is an at-a-glance view of all the deep dive modules currently available, with more due very soon. Of course, as you saw, the Parent and Caregivers corner is much lighter because it only launched last month with the new platform, but we will be adding a lot more content to that throughout the course of 2025. So currently on the left there are the existing, I forgot something really important, actually. I've got to talk about the parental control guide. So we'll go back to that in a second. But you can see there's the core modules, there's the deep dive modules, and the parental control guide that I completely forgot. So we're going to go back again. Sorry. Here we go. I knew I'd forget something. Here we go. So back up to the top here, the parental control guide, which is really, really useful and very timely as well, given that we are in the run up to Christmas. And for many families in your school community, that might be the point in the year that they purchase new devices for their children or new devices to use as a family. So being aware of parental controls is really, really helpful. So I'm just going to press on the guide here so you can see it. It gives a summary of parental controls and their purpose and what they do. But then there are separate sections here that explore how to set up parental controls for different platforms and different types of devices as well. I won't go into all of these. I think it's well worth having a little explore yourself so you are familiar with it. But if we just go into social media as one example, it talks about ways that you can set up any parental control settings that are available on some of the biggest platforms, such as Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, and WhatsApp. And indeed, there are a number of, Discord there as well, and Twitch, Reddit, Facebook, and Facebook Messenger, X, Pinterest, Skype. You can see the list goes on. And there are a number of hyperlinks that you can see there under each section that take you to various parts of those platforms or apps, safety centers, where there are more step-by-step guides on how to put those things in place as well. So it gives you a brief overview, but then useful links that you can follow to explore the safety center in your own language, hopefully, to then put those things in place. Just going to pop over to another one. So TV and streaming services, if we head over there, here we go, and have that one load up. It has some details around smart TVs that may provide parental controls. Not all manufacturers do, but some of the most popular ones, such as Samsung, LG, and any TV that uses Android or Google operating system, are likely to have controls you can put in place. And then some details again and links to things around various streaming services such as Netflix, Prime Video, and Disney Plus. So really useful information to point parents and carers towards if they're not familiar with parental controls or how to find them. There are ways to work through this resource to help find those details and hopefully put those things in place for their family. Sorry about that. I'm now going to stop sharing that again and go back to my presentation again. And it's coming back in just a moment. And we're back. Okay, so let's head back to have a look at the parents and caregivers corner again. So now we have actually covered the parental controls. It's worth just having a quick look at what is upcoming. So I mentioned 2 more core modules will be added in due course, but deep dives that are upcoming include things like cybersecurity, persuasive design, and many more. But actually, we'd love to hear from you what you think are the biggest priorities in terms of information and advice for parents and caregivers that would be really useful about different issues. So you can see we already have deep dives on cyberbullying, sexting, mis and disinformation, and online gaming. But we'd love to hear from you. What do you think the Parent Corner should include? If you go to menti.com and enter the code on screen, or if you scan the QR code with your smartphone, you can access the Mentimeter and enter up to 3 different answers that will form a word cloud of topics that you think we should include in the Parent and Caregiver Corner in the future. So I'll give you just a few moments to take note of the code or scan the QR code with your phone, and then we'll switch over and have a look at the live Menti and see what people are saying. Fabulous. So I'm going to switch to share my screen with the Menti. All the details for joining the Menti will actually be displayed on the screen as well. And my colleague Anna-Rita has popped it into the chat as well in case you miss it. But let's head over and have a look at the Menti and see what you think. Fantastic. And there might be a character limit, I'm afraid, on word clouds. So if your answer is a bit longer, it may just chop off a little bit of it. But I think we can understand those ones that have appeared so far. We've got influencers and platforms. We've got social media and mental health. We've got the use of beauty filters, particularly on social media content. Got screen time, very topical one, of course, in many families. Having difficult conversations, that's a great one. And in fact, there is some detail in that core module about how to talk to your child about online safety, about how to have some of those difficult conversations as well. So there is a little bit of guidance there too. But yeah, very valuable suggestion. Thank you. We'll just give it a few more moments. Here we are. I've got a few more coming in. So fake news, which we don't have. We do have a fake news deep dive module on the teacher and educator corner, but we don't yet have that on the parent corner. So that could be a good addition. We've got another one there for filters, AI spotting, which is a great one. I totally agree on that. My only concern is it might be out of date by the time I finish writing it, but definitely need to have more content about artificial intelligence and helping children and families to spot it online. So great suggestion. Thank you. Things around short or short form videos. That's a really good one as well. Very popular with lots of children and young people. Have I missed any? Algorithms and recommendations. Again, we do have a deep dive on algorithms in the teacher and educator corner, and that is one that definitely needs to have a place on the parent corner as well. So another great suggestion. Okay, so in the interest of time, I'm going to head off that Menti and come back to our slides. But actually, that Menti is still available there. So if you do think of anything else and you want to drop it in, then please do feel free. And if you prefer, like Susanna, you can pop a suggestion into the chat as well. So she says the business behind platforms and influencers. So how does the money-making model work behind the most prominent figures on social media and behind the major platforms themselves? Really good suggestion. Thanks, Susanna. So I'm going to stop sharing again. So sorry, lots of backwards and forwards on this one. But we will head back to the slides, and that's where we're going to stay for the rest of the webinar until I hand over to Anna-Rita. So I apologize. Last switch. And it will be coming back in just a moment. Fabulous. Okay, so oh, there we go. I'd lost my slide deck, but I have it. So I just wanted to take a few moments just to talk about some other information that may be useful to you as a teacher or educator about how you can empower parents and caregivers in your school community to talk about online safety, to be engaged with it, to know where to go to get information and advice, to take action on things that they can do at home. I'm not going to cover too much detail in this because if you joined the previous webinar that we ran in September, the Back to School webinar, we actually talked in some more detail about how to go into this and some further advice. So actually, it may be well worth going back and watching that webinar recording for further details. So I didn't want to repeat all of that content in this webinar, but I'm just going to make a couple of points that might be useful that feed into those things that we heard last time around. So one of the major things that's really important to get parents and caregivers on side and engaged with these things is to really encourage them to show engagement in their own homes with their families and their children around the use of technology and the internet. For many parents, particularly ones with younger children, that might actually be joining in and giving things a go, trying out an online game with their child and playing it together, sitting down and asking their child to share some of their favorite TikToks or YouTube shorts, or the things that they like watching from a favorite influencer at the time. But showing that engagement and that curiosity and that interest is often the fastest way in to being able to have a positive and a supportive conversation about how children can look after themselves, can look after others, and can seek help and support if they face any issues online. And if you did join the previous webinar in September, I mentioned the whole idea of the what if questions, which I think are a really great tool for anyone, be you a parent, caregiver, or educator, to use, asking children the what if questions. What if someone was bullying you on Roblox? What could you do? What if you saw someone post something hateful on Instagram? What could you do? What if you saw someone else having a really difficult time online and you were worried about them? What could you do? And these what if questions are a great way of exploring different strategies. It's a great way for uncovering what strategies children may already have to deal with issues and risks that they face online. But it's also a great way of helping equip them with new strategies or to consider different strategies that work in different contexts or situations. So curiosity and engagement is a massive one. So the more you can do to help parents have those conversations, the better. And you can see support family conversations is further down there as well. We'll come back to that point in more detail. The other thing you need to do is you need to understand what the needs are of the parents and caregivers in your school community. That could be through running a survey. It could be through sitting down with a few of them and having a chat. More often than not, I'm sure you're aware that in schools, parents and caregivers tend to come to you when there are issues. So that's often a way that you become aware of things that are going wrong. Sometimes you don't always hear about the things that are going right, or how far their knowledge and their skills extend into online safety. So it's really important to try and find out some of those things because it allows you to tailor your response better. It allows you to select more appropriate information that you might send out in your newsletter or via email or via social media posts, if that's how you communicate with parents and caregivers. Because then you can actually target it to things that maybe they need to know rather than just throwing it out there and hoping it's useful. It also allows you to be more selective in terms of the education that you might put in place as a school, not just for children and young people, but also for parents' evenings or other sessions you may run, whether that's you running it as staff or bringing in an external speaker or an NGO to provide support. It allows you to tailor those sessions and make them more focused on the needs of parents and caregivers. That could also include technical training, although you have to balance that one a little bit because sometimes you train a whole group of parents on how to use parental controls on various games or various apps, and then something new comes along that doesn't follow the same pattern, or they change the parental control settings on some of the major platforms, or they introduce new features. As many of them are currently doing in the last year that weren't there before, and you have to kind of start over from scratch again. But sometimes those technical based workshops and hands-on approaches can be useful as well. I will come back to support family conversations in a moment. That's highlighted in blue for a reason. Referencing back to the previous webinar, if you joined it, it's also really important to help families understand what your expectations are as a school around the use of technology and the internet. Not just within the school itself, but indeed as part of the wider school community. So it could be expectations around social media use and being the right age to create an account. It could be expectations about how you may follow up with issues that happen on games and apps when children are outside of school, and the issues that that might bring back into school and what your school approaches on those things. For many schools, you may have something like a homeschool agreement or some form of agreement that you sign at the beginning of the school year alongside parents and alongside children. And that can sometimes be a great opportunity to set these expectations right from the start and reinforce them regularly as well to help parents and caregivers and families understand your approach as a school. Where do you stand on these issues? And then finally, really importantly, finding ways to support them with information and advice, be it from the Better Internet for Kids portal or from other sources of information and support in your own country, be it your National Safer Internet Centre or other NGOs and organisations that have useful information and advice. It's about equipping them to know what to do and who to ask for help if they do need it. Just a couple of points very quickly on family conversations, because there are great ways about going about family conversations about online safety, and there are not so great ways. And we really want to encourage those great conversations that families can have that really do lead to positive changes in behavior and positive changes in safety for children as well. So this is the best bit of advice actually I've ever been given as a parent. I have three children. Two are a little bit older now and almost into adulthood. One is a 12-year-old. But actually, I learned this from a professional colleague in this area. And it's a great bit of parenting advice, and it works really, really well when it comes to thinking about the internet and how to tackle things if your child comes to you with an issue about something that's happened to them online. And it's a three-step process. Although I should say that step 3 is completely optional, and I'll explain why in just a moment. And it sounds really obvious when I show it, but it makes sense in context. Step 1, listen to what their problem is. Allow them to speak about it, be non-judgmental. Don't strongly react, but allow them to talk first. Let them do most of the talking so you can find out and get to the bottom of what the problem is. Step 2, help them with their problem. It might be that you have no idea what they're talking about. They're talking about something happening on an app that you've never heard of. You're just really unsure how to help. But that's okay. You might know someone who can help. It could be someone else at school. It could be another parent or caregiver in the community. It could be an expert or someone who knows that platform or app really, really well. But finding someone who can help is really, really important. And getting your child in touch with them is a really great way of then getting help and support. And then the third thing I say to parents, the optional step, is whether or not you get cross. Sometimes there are situations where children make silly mistakes or foolish decisions that land them into tricky situations online. And in those cases, of course, there may be some punishment or sanction once you've sorted out their problem to help them understand that their own behavior was unacceptable and you don't want them repeating that in the future. But actually, in many cases for children, they aren't to blame. They aren't at fault for things that happen to them online. It's the behavior and the actions of others. But the problem is that as parents, sometimes we can get very, very emotional about these things. If our child comes to tell us about something quite serious online, for us, we may get very emotional. We may jump to the worst possible conclusion about what's going on or what might happen. And it leads to lots of different emotions. It might lead to anger or upset or disappointment. And the problem is that if you lead your response with number 3, and your first instinct is to get cross or get angry or tell them off, then steps 1 and 2 never happen because children retreat and they close off and the barriers go up and they don't want to talk about it. So you don't get to listen and they don't want to talk about it. So you can't help. So one of the things that I really do advise my parents is to think very, very carefully and try and be non-judgmental and try and stay cool as much as they can when their child comes to them with an issue, because it allows 1 and 2 to happen. And then if 3 needs to happen at the end, then it can do. But their children are always left then with the sense that if something does go wrong online, they can turn to their parent or caregiver, and steps 1 and 2 are always going to happen and they're going to get that help that they need. So it sounds really obvious, but actually in the heat of the moment with things online that are very emotional, sometimes it's something that parents and caregivers forget. We're only human. A couple of other points. And I make these when I talk to parents and caregivers in workshops and training sessions as well. Firstly, is to understand that children use the internet differently to us because they're children and we're adults. We're different generations. Just because they use it differently doesn't necessarily make it wrong. It just makes it different. And that's an important distinction that can sometimes affect, again, how people respond. Sometimes it's difficult to talk about first-hand experiences, even just trying to strike up a conversation with children on how to help them be safe. So that's where you may turn to other sources of information. You may use news stories, or a story from a TV show or a film might be a better way of approaching that topic rather than having to talk about first-hand experiences. As I mentioned, emotional responses play in lots of different ways, not just in terms of responses of parents and caregivers, but also in terms of trying to help children express their feelings honestly about a situation so that they don't feel scared or reticent to say when something has upset them or made them angry or made them frustrated. Similarly, you can also talk about experiences online that evoke more pleasant emotions, such as being happy or satisfied or calm. I learned the next point down from my children the hard way, not about online safety stuff, but about parenting in general. I'm sure she won't mind me saying it. My eldest, who is now 19, used to basically, if she did something that she wasn't supposed to do, and I went into her room to ask her about it, I would always start the conversation with, "Did you do this?" I think you can already guess what the answer was every single time. She'd say no. She'd say something completely different. She'd look at the ceiling. She'd look at the floor. She'd just kind of grunt. She'd hide under her bed covers. She'd do anything but engage in a conversation. And I learned from that point forward, the hard way as a parent, that actually, if you know that something's happened involving your child and you go in to ask them if it's happened, you're never going to get the answer that you're hoping for. But then I reflected on that and thought, well, actually, why am I asking that question? I already know it's happened. Why bother? So I changed my approach as a parent moving forward, and I always went in and started the conversation in a more neutral way. I'd say, look, I found that this has happened. This isn't great, is it? How are you feeling about this? What have you done to try and sort this out so far? What can I do to help you? What should we do next? And then the conversation flowed much better because she didn't feel like she was on the defensive and she wasn't being accused of something, even though it was something that was true that we both already knew. Another point that's really important that you may well know as well as teachers and educators is that scaring children about the internet rarely gets the results you want. Telling children that everyone is going to bully them online, or that people are always out to get them, or that they're always going to see harmful content, very quickly closes children off because that is, for most children, not their day-to-day experience of the internet. Thankfully, for many of them, most of the time, their experiences are positive. So if you tell them that just bad things are going to happen to them online all the time, they switch off, they stop listening, and then it's really hard to get any messages or have any discussion or have any advice go in. It's not to say that things don't happen. Things do absolutely happen that can harm children, but it's about balancing those messages so that they are aware of these things rather than being scared by them. And I think the last 2 points are really important ones to encourage in parents and caregivers in your community, really getting them to think about their use of technology and the internet, be it, using smartphones when they're out in the playground, be it how they post on their social media channels and who their audiences are. How can they be a role model to their children to show off the best possible types of behavior that we want to instill in those children as well? And then the last point is really key as well. Children may experience tricky situations online where they may be put at risk, but it doesn't always equate to harm. Some children may have really great strategies for managing that risk and dealing with the situation in a positive way to keep themselves and others safe. For example, if they saw someone bullying them or being nasty to them on social media and they reported that behavior and blocked that person, those are positive steps to deal with that situation. There are other steps that they might need to take as well, but in the moment, they've used some positive methods to manage that risk. And we want to reinforce that. We want to praise children when they know how to do the right stuff to deal with tricky situations online. So praising the positive is absolutely key. We've already covered these throughout the quick tour of the Better Internet for Kids platform, but just to highlight, of course, there may be other helplines and organisations in your country that can offer information and advice. I've put in the slides here the links, the up-to-date links for the page on the National Safer Internet Centres, as we explored earlier, and of course the link to the resource library that we also explored in the tour earlier as well. One final thing from me before I hand over to my colleague Anna Rita with a few other announcements and bits of news. We've mentioned this in every single webinar. It is still ongoing, but if you are interested in joining the BIK Teacher Voice panel in terms of contributing your views and experience on how we can all work together to help keep children safer online and help them to manage online risk, then we would love to hear from you. And there's a link in the slides there and details in the teacher and educator corner on the platform as well. So if you haven't already expressed an interest, but you are interested, please do follow the survey link and fill it in. And that's everything from me. If you have any questions, please do feel free to drop them into the chat, but my email address is there on screen and I will pop it into the chat and you can contact me directly after this webinar as well. Other than that, thank you so much for your time and attention this evening. And I'm going to pass over to my colleague Anna Rita to give you some very important updates. Thank you.
Thank you, Gareth, and hello, everyone. Bear with me for a second while I load up my slides. In the meantime, I wanted to take the opportunity to thank Gareth for taking us on this tour. of the new Better Internet for Kids platform, and also for sharing a lot of very useful and resourceful advice. You should start seeing my slides in full screen now. We realized that this webinar has been particularly packed with content, but we're almost there. We have only a few more items in store for you, but we're almost there. So thank you so much to all the participants for joining in us on this Thursday afternoon. The first piece of news that I want to share, I hope you're seeing my presentation at the moment, is that the BIK Plus strategy, the Better Internet for Kids strategy, has officially turned 2 years. Now, you may or may not be familiar with the BIK Plus strategy. It really is a strategy that underpins the core of the work of Better Internet for Kids as a project as a whole. So it's very, very important for us. And if you're not familiar with it, is based on 3 pillars. And it says that children and young people need to be protected when they're online. They need to be empowered and they need to be respected. So this is a whole line of activities around online safety, but also digital empowerment, digital literacy, media literacy. And it's a very important piece of work for us, which was firstly adopted in May 2022, and it's now been 2 years. So we're in the process of evaluating the strategy and see the successes and see the progress, see what works, see what needs improvement. And for us, we would need your help because we're really looking for the opinions, the insights, the views of parents and caregivers and teachers and educators, and how, in your experience, young people are experiencing digital environment. So what you're seeing on screen, if you're a parent or a caregiver, you see the QR code, that's for you on the bottom left part of the slide. And if you're a teacher or an educator, the QR for you is on the bottom right side of the screen. If for some reason you happen to be both, that's great, but you will kind of need to choose what kind of hat you want to be wearing for this activities. I'm also going to put the links in the chat right now, so that's probably easier as well to access. What happens when you click on these links or you access the QR code, you're basically taken to a survey that allows you to choose all the time slots and the days that work for you, because you're going to be involved in an online group discussion that's going to take place in English, and that lasts approximately 1.5 hours, together with a whole range of other parents and teachers to, again, discuss the progress of the BIK Plus strategy. And a very important thing that I need to mention, maybe more so for teachers, but we're not perhaps also for parents and caregivers, you can request a certificate of participation. And I think that's quite an important, incentive in taking part of this evaluation. So yeah, there are still slots. We added some days for December, and we're going to continue adding some days also into the new year. So keep an eye on the page. You can find all the information on the address that you see on the slide, and it's also in the chat where we talk about the evaluation in a bit more detail. But yeah, thank you so much for any help and support that you can give us in this domain. As I said, it's a really, really important piece of work for us. It's really going to shape also our activities in the next 2 years. Moving on, in the meantime, if you have any questions, as always, you can type them in the chat, or you can reach Gareth or me afterwards. The other things, slightly changing the topic, but we're not really changing the focus, which is again on teachers and educators, parents and caregivers, and of course, children and young people. I just wanted to quickly mention Media Smart Online, which is one of the new campaigns that we've been working on at Better Internet for Kids for the past couple of years. This campaign is specifically on media literacy. And again, we're going back to the second pillar of the strategy about digital empowerment and providing young people with the skills they need to safely navigate the online world. It's a new thing that we started this year from scratch. So we did the very first full Europe-wide rollout of this campaign this year. It started on the 24th of October, which was the first day of the Global Media and Information Literacy Week by UNESCO, and it's currently still running. We're really in the last stretch because next week is going to be the very last week. It runs until the 6th of December, so it's a great opportunity again to go and check out the materials. What we try to do with this campaign is really to spotlight all the media literacy resources, initiatives, trainings, videos, podcasts, events, campaigns, anything that you can think of that could benefit our target audiences all across Europe. And that really is thanks to the all hard work that the Safer Internet Centers do. every year in producing very valuable material. What we try to do is to collect all these resources. We put them in a guide, which is the QR code that you see on the right, the guide B Media Smart Align. It's a database that's constantly growing. Right now, I think we're counting about 130 resources, but then that is going to increase again in the future. I'm also going to put the links in the chat now so that you have easier access. And yeah, so what we've been doing with this campaign on social media, especially on Instagram, which is again a new thing for us, but you can also find us on X, Facebook, and LinkedIn, our usual Better Internet for Kids social media accounts. We've been trying to spotlight all these different resources that are available, and the biggest advantage for us is that they're in a lot of different languages. So we're kind of crossing that language barrier that is often there when you try to reach parents, when you try to reach young people, and because English again is a very widely spoken language, but you can never substitute everyone's national languages. So the guide is still there. You can access it on the website, but you can also download the database that I was talking about as a spreadsheet, and there you can filter by country, by language, by type of resources. Let's say you're looking for a particular video or you're looking for an event in your country. And again, it's really valuable information that we worked really hard on, that we're really happy to share, and just enjoy the very last week of social media activities around the campaign. And then again, really the very last thing, I know it's been a lot of content today, lots of novelty. So thank you so much if you're still, paying attention to the presentation. But really the very last thing, consider this a bit of an early Christmas present as we're also approaching the winter holidays. But just to say, we also have, on top of everything that Gareth shared, and you probably spotted Gareth mentioning the age assurance, we have a whole new section of the website dedicated to age assurance. And we've produced now a sort of toolkit that, again, is supposed to help. It includes a lot of key messages and concepts around age assurance. So we're trying to answer to some of the most some of the most common questions, like what is age assurance? What does it mean? What is age assurance? What is age verification? Is there a difference? What are some examples of age assurance methods? What are the laws that are required when it comes to this topic? What are platforms and online services required to do when it comes to age assurance? So a lot of questions that are around this topic. We try to collect everything and give explanations and context in the simplest possible way. And we produce this toolkit, which again, I'm going to put the links in the chat too, but you also have the QR code on the screen. Once again, you can find them on the new BIK portal. It's a series of explainers. There's 10 main questions that get a simple explanation. But you can also download it, everything as a PDF, as the age assurance toolkit. So again, another tool that hopefully will help us and help you navigate some of the more complicated areas of the online world, especially when it comes to the protection of minors. I think that's it. We're on time exactly. It's almost 6 p.m. So I'll quickly stop sharing. But yeah, just to say, and it's been mentioned already, that this webinar, the recording of this webinar will be available on the new BIK platform. Gareth showed us the webinar page. We're just going to put everything there. And it will be also be a good opportunity to look back on some of the previous webinars because they all contain very valuable information. And then since I see that there are no current questions in the chat, you can always find me and Gareth in case something comes up. I just want to thank Gareth again for the presentation and mostly thank all the participants for joining us today on this gloomy Thursday afternoon. And I wish you all a very happy evening moving forward. And thank you so much for joining again. Goodbye.